everyone. I'm your host, Tara Reid, and this is the Politics of Survival. Many of you have been, my phone's been kind of blowing up, so I'll cut right to the chase. I did a Tucker Carlson interview a couple of months ago about what happened to me when I was a staffer for Joe Biden, and that has been released. The full interview is released tomorrow. There are clips tonight. You can find it on INN if you look on our Twitter feed, and I will eventually do a quote tweet and throw up some pictures. Tucker was very lovely. He gave me a platform with dignity and grace, and I appreciated that so much. So check out my interview with Tucker Carlson, and my hope is there will be an investigation into Joe Biden's corruption, not only for the sexual assault that I endured and being basically him using his power to silence me and go after me and my family, but also with issues around Ukraine and the economic which I believe, in my opinion, has been corruption and this proxy war that the US and NATO is fighting against Ukraine, and the horrible Russophobia that has happened and kind of put a stranglehold on our country to the point where really good news outlets like RT have been utterly canceled in the US and actually banned in Europe. So many of my audience members are RT fans, so I know you understand how awful that is. And tonight I have some special guests. They're going to talk to me about another story that's being very much hushed up and very much silenced. And that is about the fact that the US and NATO combined have almost spent $80 billion on weapons and aid going to Ukraine. There has been very little oversight or accounting for those weapons. As a result, Interpol a couple of months ago released a warning that many of those weapons are ending up in the hands of terrorists. And here tonight to discuss this is the UN ambassador, and I'm very honored to have him back from Russia, Dmitry Polyanskiy, and the esteemed professor, Dan Kovalik, an author who is also here to discuss this. We just recently spoke to the UN about this issue. So welcome, both of you. I'm so glad to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tara.
Yeah, so let's start. First of all, I was gonna maybe take a shot at talking to the UN Security Council because I've done a lot of research into this issue, and I've done a lot of, I have a law degree, I've studied international relations and worked for politicians. And so I was very interested in that there's a lack of accounting, and Republicans are the only ones that seem to be trying to push for some sort of oversight or accounting for all these weapons going to Ukraine, and they're ending up in the hands of possibly terrorists. And I was wondering, Dmitry, when I tried to come to that meeting, we had something happen, and Reef, you can put up what happened. The video link was accepted, I was vetted, and then it was revoked. So I guess Biden's team or the Westerners got a hold of that. But Dmitry, could you talk about the resistance, not just to me speaking, because Dan spoke eloquently in my place, but just having the meeting at all? Can you talk about that?
Yes, Tara, that was not an easy task to conduct this meeting. We asked for it, and this is a topic that is very awkward for our Western ex-partners. That's why, of course, we feel a lot of resistance. And I think you got a share of this resistance as well, because I think your name was too toxic for them. And they did everything they could to block you from participating. And they have such a right. I don't think that the Biden administration was involved, but I would say the US mission, of course, was part of it, and other Western missions. They objected. They said that you don't have necessary expertise for this. And it's very good that we had Dan to replace you, and it was very difficult for them to block two moves because the image would be, of course, very much spoiled. So we managed to have Dan speaking, and I'm very much grateful to him because he presented us with a very blunt picture of what's happening about arms deliveries to Ukraine. And we think that this is a very important element of this conflict. And in fact, you were absolutely right that the hostilities that are now taking place there is not between Russia and Ukraine as such. Sometimes it's very difficult, and we mentioned it in our speech, to understand whom are we fighting, because we are fighting Western weapons, which are being tackled with Western instructors. There are a lot of Western mercenaries, and we know this because we hear them on the radio and we have their bodies discovered. We also know that the troops there are being guided. The Ukrainian troops are being guided by Western intelligence data. So if you combine these three elements, it's really hard to understand whom you are fighting and what kind of Ukrainians are we facing. Are they Ukrainians at all? And of course, another angle of this story you rightfully mentioned is that the arms, because of corruption and because of corruption both in Ukraine and I think in the West, easily gets in the hands of those who do not deserve any right to have these weapons. To terrorists, and Dan mentioned Nigerian President Buhari saying that this was one of the main sources now of deliveries of weapons in the Sahel region, which is already a trend. So we see that it's not only a problem there between Ukraine and Russia, but it's now becoming the global problem of smuggling of arms from Ukraine, which is a black box, and this black box is absolutely open. And as we witnessed during the meeting, and I think that Dan will share my impression, that Western countries absolutely don't want to speak about it. They just dismiss it. They say there is not such a problem. My American counterpart even assumed that the only smuggling of the weapons which is happening is when Russian troops capture some of this weapon, and then it's getting to the black market. This is of course laughable and ridiculous, but that was the only thing that he was ready to admit about smuggling of weapons. So of course this was a very illustrative meeting, and the trends were absolutely visible, that they want to speak about everything. They want to repeat the same mantra about Russian aggression and so on and so forth, but they don't want to look into the root causes of this conflict. And they don't want to acknowledge that the factor of deliveries of the weapons, of Western weapons to Ukraine, is actually putting gasoline into fire. And I think
the fire.
yeah, that's absolutely obvious for everybody.